As Shakespeare once said, the fault is not in our stars but in ourselves, from Julius Caesar. You might wonder why I'm bringing up something like this today. It's because I believe that we're going into a very significant economic recession, coupled with something called stagflation, something from the 1970s. If any of you who were around at the time, you might remember what that was. And we have a lot of things that are very similar to that. Today I'm going to try and do a history session, talking about the 1930s depression, 1970s stagflation, and the 2008 crash, with the ultimate aim of giving context on what may happen, I believe will happen, in the very near future. Hey everyone, welcome back to Political X. For more knowledge and updates on UK, European and US politics, make sure you subscribe to this channel. So I guess the fair question is, why on earth would I think that we're going to go and bounce back into a recession? And I've got a whole host of reasons as to why, and I'm pretty sure if you're a UK viewer or a US viewer, you've probably seen this, although obviously the US situation is slightly different. I not been around town centres in the US, or city centres, or small villages in the US, so I've got no idea what it's like. But in the UK currently, if you go around pretty much any town centre, it has been depleted, and there are a good number of reasons for that to have happened. In the UK, that would be partly down to Brexit. Through Brexit, the UK has decided to set up trade barriers with the whole of the EU, including an internal barrier with Northern Ireland. So trade barriers are never good, ever. And Britain was hoping to also get free trade agreements with the US and maybe some other countries. However, it's not really happened. The US is not budging on giving us a free trade deal, and EU have now got trade barriers with us, which means products take longer to get across the border. And on top of that, they cost more to come across the border or to export into the EU. If we want to trade further afield, and we got a free trade agreement with Australia recently, it doesn't make much of a difference because we have a tariff with that automatically. By the fact that it's on the opposite side of the globe, it costs money to transport goods to and from Australia and the UK. It does not offset the loss of trade and trade barriers put up with the EU. Trade barriers have meant that the price of food has now gone up. We also have issues relating to COVID, which has also caused a shortage of food. So, for example, I'm aware that the production of wheat has gone down. However, Brexit has a knock-on effect with our own industry. We can't get labour in at the moment to come and pick our fruit and veg, or to kill our poultry and do other animal husbandry. Because we have the labour shortages, we've got other issues taking place within the industry. There are too many animals within the farming community, and that means that they need to be slaughtered, which means we'll have fewer animals next year, and that means prices will go up. So we won't be producing as much food. That means food prices go up. The cost of fuel is going up, which I'll bring up in a minute in relation to this, but that's going to cause food prices to go up. We've put up trade barriers for food, so that's going to make food prices go up. Overall, we've clearly got an issue. That means less money in your pocket, which means that more money's going towards food than it is towards other commercial activities and services, which is another hindrance towards business as well as farming, because it cuts into your profits. And if it cuts into your profits, that then means you might have to start laying off workers. And that's part of the problem of the recession. The next problem is fuel. And that also links into agriculture. Fuel prices go up, cost of agriculture goes up, cost of food goes up, price of food goes up, and that then eats into your pocket, stopping you from buying and purchasing other goods and services. Even this is just a temporary dent in the UK economy, we can still say that this is going to have a knock-on effect for the next few weeks, and I'd be really surprised if the forecourts and BP and Shell and all these other companies will quickly reduce the price of their fuel. If anything, they'll keep them at a higher rate for quite a while. Gas prices, electric prices, all soaring. Again, more money out of your pocket, which means you cannot use that money to reinvest into other areas of the economy. We also have issues with construction. The price of housing will go up. We have labour shortages. That means that if you want to get a labourer in, you've got to pay them more money. That then goes on to the added costs of constructing the house. We also have issues with, again, Brexit and the trade barriers, because that now means housing prices are going to go up. The price of construction materials has gone up, especially with wood, increasing by about 30%. Add this to the issues of fuel and transporting all those goods over to the property, again, prices are going to go up. This has to be one of my greatest concerns, the amount of borrowing and debt that the UK government have gotten into since 2007. Especially when you bear in mind how much we paid off of old debt, including, I believe, World War I and the slave debt. And yet, debt has still continued to increase in this country, and it's gotten to a point where it's about 98% of debt to GDP. This means that we look unstable as an economy, and we have to reduce that debt amount to look more stable. On the plus side, with British reputations, it seems very similar to that of the Lannisters. We seem to always pay our debts. However, the bigger concern is the US debt, which is at 106%. It's about $1 trillion. And the US government is struggling to figure out what to do next because it has a cap on that $1 trillion. And it's about to hit that cap. And what is the next stage? How do they pay it off? How do they do that in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of a recession?
Secretary Yellen is warning that if Congress doesn't raise the debt limit by October 18th, that there'll be a financial crisis, a calamity, as she calls it. Is this what you think will trigger this October crash?
Well, I think it's already been triggered personally, because after I posted that market crash,
That was Robert Kiyosaki being interviewed there, a investment guru by some, a nasty piece of work by others. He is definitely siding on caution and saying, look, the stock market's going to crash. This is good for me. I'm an investor. I can make some money out of this. But overall, he is definitely suggesting there's a crash happening. And it's interesting to hear it from someone like that on TV, because that's normally quite rare. You don't want people publicising this type of event taking place, because it can also cause panic, especially for someone like him who is an influencer. What has disturbed me the most is the level of debt that the US is in. And on top of that, the level of debt that the United States has been before when they had their last major crash, which is slightly difficult to ascertain from here, but it does look like it's in the 1930s. Or it started in the 1930s and skyrocketed, which is when we had a major depression across the world and kicked off by a number of things that took place in the United States. Essentially, debt is part and parcel of the economic world. However, the level of debt that you're in can cause massive ramifications, and it looks like the US is in significant trouble if its debt levels are reaching similar to that of the 1930s. Essentially suggesting there's been an overspend both within the United States and, as I said earlier, with the UK. So now we've got to go into some technical terms to really get our heads around what is taking place, and also the significance of that graph and the debt to GDP. So the first thing I've got to talk about, or I don't have to, but I'm going to talk about, is the issues of inflation. Essentially, inflation and the percentage of inflation relates to the value of goods. So you'll notice in the UK market, inflation has gone up by about 4%. That's in relation to the value of goods and services. So the more that value of goods and services goes up, that is reflected within the level of inflation. So it means that prices are going up. And the sweet spot is generally considered to be at about 2%. You want inflation going up because it encourages people to buy. Why does it encourage you to buy? Because in theory, it's cheaper to buy it now than it is in the future. What you don't want is the opposite inflation, which is deflation. And deflation is what has caused crashes in the past, because with deflation, your profits go down. So one of the solutions is to fire workers. That means they don't have money to spend, And that then causes this ever-growing economic crash. Because the households have less money coming in because there are fewer jobs, that means they can't spend, which means businesses have to reduce, and this also means that governments have less in tax. That's why there's an issue. Now, this is also connected to velocity of money, which in simple terms means spending. Are people spending money? And in the US right now, they are not. What they're doing is saving their money because everyone's expecting a crash. Or there's a lack of job security. So essentially they're worried that they're going to get fired from their job. So within the UK at the moment, we have got a labour shortage, which means prices are going up. But we've also got trade barriers, which means prices are going up. So what do businesses have to do? Well, they've got to make a decision because they want to keep their profits at a certain level. Most likely they're not going to be hiring people, or they're going to have to downsize. And we've already seen that within the farming community. One of the further issues with Brexit is that instead of having money to invest in UK and UK business and UK workers, we're having to see big companies take their money and spend it within Europe to set up companies over there. So we're actually helping out the EU and then suffering over here as a result. Now, the other thing that's taken place during COVID was government taking huge loans from the Bank of England and from a number of private banking firms. That then means that there's more money in circulation. So we've got a situation where there are going to be fewer jobs, higher prices, and your money has less value. A limit in how much stock is available to use, which also means because of the labour shortages, companies cannot really increase as much as they'd probably like to. So this is something that's called stagflation, or has the potential to be stagflation. Your output can only go so high. You're imprinting money because you borrowed it from the bank and you've paid a load of people for it, which obviously also has to be paid back. But if your output is limited and you're still pumping money into the system, you're not going to go anywhere. You're stagnant, you cannot move forward, which is exactly what took place in the 1970s. Now, the other thing that has taken place is a combination of COVID and tech. Tech has pretty much cancelled out a ton of work, which has scared the bejesus out of Ian Duncan Smith and a few others. In fact, I even had an argument with Nick Ferrari on the radio about this, talking about how essentially, if you're a business owner, why would you get people coming into your office when you can save all that money on office space, hot seat the desks so that people can still come in for meetings if necessary, but significantly reduce cost in your business to the point where you are saving millions in some cases. There are banks, there are online schools that operate and function fully without any need to having a large office space. Now, this has scared the UK government so much so that Ian Duncan Smith and Boris both came out trying to encourage people to go back into the city centres and work to help the coffee makers. But it's more than that. If you do lectures, which I have done in the past, if I was to host a seminar, wink wink, nudge nudge, anyone out there who's interested, I do not have to travel anymore. I can do it all online from my computer. That then shuts down other industries, that shuts down hotels, that shuts down flights potentially, cars, transport, gas stations, coffee shops, because we're not having to travel in. And there's a huge cultural shift as well. People don't want to go in all the time. I'm finding very few saying, I'm happy to go in 5 days a week. And that's why Ian Duncan Smith and the others are absolutely panicking over this, because it means there's a change in the economy that's so significant that it's actually going to hamper the recovery. Now, what I did promise is a lesson from history, and I'll keep it nice and short. But essentially, we're going to look at 1929 and 1930 stock crash, which caused a thing called the Great Depression that really knocked the world on its feet, and arguably had an impact and influence on the rise of nationalism and fascism. According to historian David Kennedy, who wrote about America's experience, by 1929, commercial bankers were in the unusual position of loaning more money for stock market and real estate investments than for commercial ventures. Where have we heard that before? If you said 2008 crash, ding, 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 ding. Correct. Well done. You figured it out. Gold star to you. Yeah, the exact same thing that took place in the 1930s took place in 2008. And guess what? The exact same thing is taking place now. People aren't spending money. Money is being put into investments and into property. One of the criticisms that came from 2008 was the government's failure to regulate the system. And bearing in mind we've just had Donald Trump in power, who was absolutely up for deregulation, we've now got the potential for an even bigger crisis on our hands. The US government did a financial inquiry crisis report into this through Congress, and it stated the centuries were not at their posts in no small part due to the widely accepted faith in the self-correcting nature of the markets and their ability of financial institutions to effectively police themselves. As we all know, that utterly failed and we had to do a big bailout. However, we have not learned the lessons from 2008 and have continued to repeat them. And frankly, because Boris and his team of goons don't have any level of creativity or forward thinking, and it seems that Whitehall is stuck in the past and unable to adapt to situations around them, especially something like this, where technology is having a massive impact on our economy, as well as COVID, as well as labour shortages, as well as trade barriers, and all in part created by Brexit. I don't think we're going to get out of this, and it's going to take a lot for a big country like the United States or China to step in and sort out the financial crisis that's been created. So I am sorry about the bad news. That is just my opinion. Obviously, I do hope that I'm completely incorrect. But on that note, I would like to say I discovered today my first patron, Frank Smith. So I'm giving you a big shout out in today's video. Thank you so much. It was, amazing to see that this channel is growing. If you enjoyed the video, obviously, please pass this on and share it around. And I'd love to hear your suggestions on other videos.
I hope you enjoyed my political observations this week. If you'd like to support me, please share the video with others and post about it on social media. If you're keen for more, subscribe, comment, like, and hit that notification button. Thanks for listening, and see you next time on Political X.